UAP Disclosure Act of 2024 was recently shut down, gutted, stripped down, and has not passed in its full form. Now, this is seemingly bad news or disappointing news for those who want more disclosure and government transparency about UFOs. But I am going to argue in this video of why I think this is a good thing, why I think the fact that this bill did not pass the way it was written is a good thing. And so we're going to get into it here. First, we'll start with a quick review of what is the UAP Disclosure Act. And then we'll get it, and then I'll show you why it's good that it didn't get passed. And I think my argument is strong on that sense. And then we'll just look at some of the reporting of why it got shut down, and then where does this leave us now with the whole UAP UFO disclosure topic. So let's get into it. All right, so the recent UAP Disclosure Act of 2024 was the second attempt to pass the 2023 Act. All right, it was just recently reported within the last few days that the bill was again gutted. And so now we're going to look at what was gutted and why do I argue that this is a good thing. And I think it's actually really obvious, but and nobody really focuses on this. So forgive me if there are moments where maybe I get a little passionate, because to me it's just crazy. Like, I haven't heard anybody criticize the UAP Disclosure Act in this way. Everybody seems to just be like, everyone kind of conforms to this idea that, like, this is the bill that's going to get us disclosure. And while I can recognize its importance for certain reasons, which I'll talk about in a minute, it's also like obvious to me that this would not be a good path if we actually want to know the truth and want to know what the highest levels of the government actually know about this whole phenomena. And as I say here, if the UAP Disclosure Act was passed in its full form, basically a legal framework would be in place to withhold the truth about UFOs from the public for as long as they want. And that is going off the language in the bill. It's very simple, and I'll explain it to you. Now, let's get one thing straight. The UAP Disclosure Act of 2024 was basically an attempt to get all the other parts of the 2023 Act pass. Now, when this came out last year, this was in July of 2023 that this bill was put forward. This, as I say in the first bullet point, just the fact that this bill was passed in the Senate unanimously, passed by the Senate Intelligence Committee, commissioned by the Senate Intelligence Committee, who are the ones that are read into the most classified information in the Department of Defense, in the military. So they would be the only people of the 535 Congress members who would know the most about what there is to know about this topic. And yeah, the word non-human intelligence was used 22 times in the bill. It talks about UFO crash retrievals and all of that. So I have a whole video actually about that, because there's a lot in the bill and a lot of nuances. So I have like an hour-long deep dive in the bill. I will put a link to that below. That's a video from like over a year ago or something. But anyway, second bullet point. What the UAP Disclosure Act did establish is that all UAP records would have to be gathered by all of the government agencies, and they'd all have to be submitted to a central repository at the National Archives. That is what has been passed. That was passed in 2023, and that is still in effect now. Now, the third bullet point is the eminent domain part. And basically what this said was any technology or biological material of non-human intelligence origin would become property of the United States government, and as the bill puts it, to be put to use for, quote, for the public good. Now, this part is controversial for different reasons, with some people saying, well, if you are a private entity and you happen to recover the craft, or happen to, come and find, non-human intelligence technology or biologics, then like it's not fair that the government could just come and take for you. Sure, I mean, that's a valid argument, but that's not what the bill is saying, and that's not really the framework. Like, the point is this, and this is what David Grusch is at the center of his whistleblower case, and what his lawyer, Chuck McCullough, who was the inspector general of the intelligence community for 7 years and is representing David Grusch, and what he said in the only public comment that he's ever made about this, which was in an obscure interview on a British radio show. And it was like 10 seconds that he talked. But he said the heart of this whole thing is the fact that these operations and this information has been illegally, unconstitutionally withheld from Congress. Okay. So that's the point, as I see it, of eminent domain. It's not for the government to take someone who finds something on their own out there. Like, if I go in my backyard and find a piece of a crashed UFO and I reverse engineer it, of course I should be able to have ownership over the intellectual property or something. But the point here is that government funds were used. So that means our taxpayer dollar, and that government agencies that by law are required to be overseen by Congress have done this, as Grush has said, for decades and decades, and they've done it illegally. So the eminent domain is to say, oh, anything you did get and you did develop on your own that was as part of a government or a government contract, then we will take it as eminent domain. Now, obviously, the powers that be, whoever they may be, would be very much opposed to this for obvious reasons. But in essence, I think that, this is what some have said about the whole eminent domain part, is that that was like a move to kind of smoke out the cover up people. In other words, if this is all nonsense, crash retrievals, having non-human tech, having non-human biologics, like the bill says, and you say if you have it, then it becomes property of the U.S. government for the public good. If this was just the most ridiculous nonsense, then why would you care? You just let the bill pass. Sure, come look. If you find alien bodies, they're all yours, right? But they didn't. They specifically gutted that part and was a controversial part. So that is very telling in itself. And just the fact that this bill was passed by the Senate Intelligence Committee is very telling in itself. So fast forward now, they're trying to get the same things passed, and that's what just got shut down. Now we'll get into why I think the UAP Disclosure Act would not be a good thing. And as I said, it would give them the power to keep the truth from us for as long as they want. 25, 50 years, 100 years, whatever. Because when we look at the details of the bill, that's where we understand that. First bullet point. Yes, there would have been a review panel of 9 people. Okay, now, in a sort of idealistic way, that sounds great, right? They're independent people. These were supposed to be like civilians, like expert scholars and people representing like psychology, sociology, science, like a variety of these kind of professionals. And then like one person from the intelligence community of the United States. So it sounds all nice and practical, but at the end of the day, I don't think it's a good idea, because for a number of reasons that I could go on and on about. But to be brief here, look, this is 9 people. This is what would happen. All right, let's jump to the second bullet point first to talk about what these 9 people would do. Basically, as all this information would hopefully be passed from these agencies that are keeping it secret all these years, and they would be submitted to this National Archives and to the review board. This review board would look at the evidence, the information, and then they would decide and vote if it should be released to the public. And if they vote and decide that it should not, then they would postpone it. And in the bill, if you read it, basically they would have to give a certain number of reasons as to why the information must be postponed. And then every year, after a certain number of time, they would have to again, as a board, review the postponement and again justify why they're going to continue the postponement. All right. And that sounds like good and all, but as I say up back in the first bullet point there underneath it, this is a very vulnerable process. Okay. Look at other panels that were established, the Robertson panel and other instances of the unofficial, board to study this problem. Also, you see the picture I have there of JFK, and this bill, and it says it in the bill, was very much based off of the model of the JFK declassification bill. Okay. And now we're looking at that, something that happened, 60 years ago? John F. Kennedy getting shot, right? Assassinated. And there's still records that are not public. And again, if there was nothing of a cover-up or a illegal, sinister involvement of some portion of the U.S. government in the JFK assassination, why would the files still be classified? It's ridiculous. And if anything, that shows you that that system, this review board of 9 people, is a perfect vehicle for just delaying and postponing and just continuing the cover-up while like officially doing something about it. And it kind of takes the issue off of the pressure of the government, really, I think, because then it's like, we're doing it. We got the UAP review board. We got it all going, like, right. And then these 9 people are deciding for the US and essentially, I guess, for the general humanity, the public, about what we get to know about this. And these 9 people could be manipulated. They could be bribed. They could be threatened. I mean, it doesn't take much with a threat. Let's be real here. If somebody, if you're on this review board and you have children or you have people that you love and they come and they just say, and they threaten you and threaten those people, and you know that they're powerful people, that's going to have an effect. It's a very simple tactic. And again, I'm not making this up from my own speculation. David Grusch, that's part of his whistleblower claims, is that people have been retaliated against, threatened, and harmed in trying to expose the truth about this UFO cover-up, whatever it is. So the 9-person review panel, nice in a kind of idealistic way if everyone was perfect, but we know it doesn't work that way. We know the JFK example is clear. We still don't know the full technical conclusive truth about who, what's the cover up of JFK, what really happened. So no way on that. And now you see I have the presidents there, right? This is the real key part. Forget about it. Okay. Let's say you think the 9-person review panel would be honest people. And actually to that point, actually, before I move on, I have the picture of Gary Nolan down there. And that's a very recent interview with him about the UAP Disclosure Act of 2024. And I listened to a good amount of that interview. And I was actually surprised by Gary Nolan, the way he was talking, because he's the one that a couple years ago said in the public conference that the certainty that there's non-human intelligence interacting with Earth, right, is 100%, right? And he's also said pretty blatantly, there are crash retrievals, so forth. He's aligned with David Grusch, so clearly he's got to know a lot more than most of us to the reality, apparently, of this actual UFO crash retrieval program and reverse engineering. Now, if you listen to that interview with Gary Nolan, it was surprising to me because he was talking about the subject of UAP, UFOs, almost like he kept like saying qualifiers for his statements. Like he was like, if it turns out that it's real, if these things are real. And I'm like, dude, didn't you already say like they're 100% real? So it seems like he's backtracking. There's been other instances of things that might suggest that Gary Nolan has possibly been, well, he said it himself that he's been threatened. So I think you have to wonder, right? And he said that he was asked to be on the review board of the 9 people. And seemingly that would be a good thing. But again, as I say in a lot of my videos, sort of like a theme is like, I think we got to watch out for like a limited disclosure. Again, meaning, yes, there's things out there, but, and it's real and it's been kept secret, but we don't really know how they work. We can't understand it, right? When the truth might be much deeper, potentially darker. than that. But even though darker, potentially revolutionary, maybe for humanity, if it involves some kind of suppressed physics of a technology that, let's say, could give us free energy or something like that, which would obviously transform our world, could transform it in a very positive way. But the reason I think it's probably been kept secret, one of the core reasons, but not the only one, is that this same technology that possibly could, you know, liberate the planet, let's say, could also be used as a deadly weapon that we could destroy ourselves. So, maybe that's, I think logically that's probably a good reason why it's been so secret all these years. But anyway, I digress here. I think we have a very strong reason to be cautious about trusting these 9 people, who, by the way, would be appointed by the president. And that gets me to the president part. Last bullet point here. This is the part that's crazy about the UAP Disclosure Act. And I've brought this up to actually the group. You see Danny Sheehan, the lawyer there on the left, and it was his group, the New Paradigm Institute, who was involved in the UAP Disclosure Act. And I happened to go to they had like a meeting of sorts, and I was there, and I had a chance to speak, and I made this point I'm about to make to you right now, which was that why would we give so much power to the president? Okay, because as the last bullet point says there in the bill, it's written, let's say this 9-person review panel kept postponing the disclosure of certain information. And let's say they did it 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. It goes all the way up to 25 years. And then after 25 years, it has to be disclosed. Okay, that seems maybe fair. Meaning, like, if there is like the craziest truth about this whole UFO UAP thing that would just like cause chaos, shock people, right? Um, 25 years seems reasonable to delay it, but here's the problem with the way the bill's written. If the current president after that 25 years does not want to disclose it and can give a reason that is accepted, he can postpone it indefinitely. Meaning, as just there's no like timeline on like, doesn't matter what anyone says, president or not, has to come out. And this is a big problem, okay? Because why should we trust that the president is going to be a good person to make that decision? I mean, I have the pictures up there, right? Look at Joe Biden didn't say anything about UAPs the whole time. He made one comment about when the Chinese balloons were shot down, right? But he didn't say anything. And he had the biggest serious attention of UFOs in history, really, of the government, with the hearings and everything. Didn't say a word. Bush, we know, other presidents that they're why would we trust that the president should be the one that gets to decide what people get to know about our reality? It's absurd. I'm telling you, it's absurd. And I don't see how anybody could disagree with me. Do you really trust whoever becomes president to make that decision? Should that be their decision even? Man, I would like to hear somebody argue against that. That the presidential power of this one person to disclose to us our something about our reality, that would be huge. Imagine, let's just pick an example. Let's say, the CIA or whoever at some point uncovered the evidence that, I'm just going to throw something out there that would be like shocking to people. We were created by non-human intelligent beings, aliens. I don't know, thousands of years ago. Let's just say that the CIA uncovered enough evidence that that became known as a reality, and that's part of what's withheld. And let's say in 25 years that current president is there and just goes, "Damn, I don't want to be the person that has to disclose this. This could cause chaos." Okay, in this example, that thing that I'm sure we'd like to know, if anyone's ever been able to get evidence to prove that, to just pick a random example, we would never know. We would never know. Not to mention something more practical, like they figured out anti-gravity in the 50s. There are There are technologies and the physics is understood of how to tap into the quantum field and the 0-point energy, which would revolutionize our world. We would just never know. And if you're older, if you're 60, 80 years old, I mean, yeah, you don't get to know. I mean, hopefully, if we're a little younger, maybe we would get to know. So this is not a good act. And that's basically my case. Right? And so now this bill gets gutted, and we'll kind of close this out here by showing a little bit about what happened. I'm going to play a couple of short clips about like the sentiment from some other UFO researchers seeing this as sort of like disappointing. But again, like I've already made clear here in my argument, it's a good thing. There are better ways. So yeah, the UAP bill was shut down. Liberation Times covered it. And basically, who was implicated here was the Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs. Apparently, they shut it down. The Senate Intelligence and Armed Services Committee, which are the top two committees for military in the Senate, they were all for the bill. But Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs apparently blocked it. Sources state that the UAP Disclosure Act failed to include the manager's package, and it was Senator Rand Paul who gave the most resistance. All right. And as they report here, in 2021, Senator Rand Paul implied that the $22 million that was spent on the UAP program was a bad use of government money. So that's shows that he's had a history of kind of thinking this topic is not worth investigating. And these were the three things that did make it into the bill, which basically are just that there's going to be financial oversight, auditing of Arrow. And the second one that, they're going to have to start collecting those reports of all the UAP records from the agencies that we're hoping they're just going to voluntarily hand over. Yeah. And, other funding limitations. So really nothing. Now I'm going to play for you a couple clips of what some other UFO researchers are saying about this recent news.
People don't want this stuff to come out, and there's more to it. And this was going to be the kind of the groundbreaking thing. This is nothing inside of these things. It's not even really mentioned. So the only thing that you got hope for right now is this hearing with the USO stuff. And what I hope is that they're as frustrated, people who are running this hearing, as we are about the fact that this is what got in there. And they say, let's bring the thunder to this thing. Let's really fire down some stuff. But who's to say that the same people aren't getting involved? The hearing that's coming with Gillibrand and the Arrow stuff, I think, is, as I mentioned many times over, is just basically to say, here's the new person who's doing this, and these cockamamie provisions that are in there right now. That's who Arrow is going to be handing this off to. But the other stuff isn't there. And so everybody else who has this stuff can have a sigh of relief that there's no one who's going to be knocking on the door. There's too much money that these programs have and these people have against a system that doesn't have a lot of budget in order to fight these things. It's like Rocky versus 17 Dragos. You're not going to do it. You ain't going to do it. Some people say, well, Rocky beat Drago. Not 17 of them. So anyway, once again, you look at this and it's just...
Okay. So, and I think that Christian makes some good points there in basically, but I just would take a different approach in thinking I don't see this as a bad thing because, like I just made my argument, I think that putting that power into 9 people who can be easily manipulated and the president to decide what we get to know about our reality, right? That's known by our government that's supposed to be working for us and by us for us, right? As Carl Nell has argued. We don't need that bill, honestly. And like he said, the hearings do have the potential. The hearings have the potential. And how do you become Goliath against David? Well, We can look back to history a little bit. We can look back to, for example, the hearings of the 1970s, which I bring up a lot. Look up the Church Committee, and that's how they discovered MK Ultra. All right, which is a pretty sick, sinister thing that the CIA was doing for 20 years that nobody knew about, experimenting on unwitting citizens, mind control. Damn, they definitely didn't want that to come out. But what happened? Somebody leaked information to the press, and then that created a government investigation. It was public hearings. It lasted for, I think, a year or two. And then they had another set of hearings. Hundreds of people testified. And they got the truth out as much as they could. Now, the CIA, they destroyed all their files on MK Ultra. But the only information that did come to light was pretty sinister, and that came to light by accident. They missed some files were found years later that they missed, and then there was an earlier report from the late 60s that had kind of like investigated it and had kind of made a report. So that's all they had to go off. Otherwise, all the other files were deleted. And yeah, that's corollaries to the UAP issue. Again, what's going to make these agencies turn it all over? They're really going to turn over their evidence? If they, what makes you think they can't hide it? They've got the deep underground military bases that we know exist. Who knows? They've got the resources to hide stuff. So why would we think they would just go, all right, we'll turn it over now? I think it's kind of nearsighted. And that's why we need things like leaks, whistleblowers, and hearings. We don't need a 9-person review panel and the president to tell us what we get to know. Let these people come forward in the hearings and let them testify, and then let investigators in the Senate, in the House, in Congress go and get to the bottom of the truth, like they did with some degree of success with the church hearings in the 70s. So let's hear another perspective here. This is from Chris Lado.
I'm frustrated as well. I was pretty disappointed to see that Rand Paul, who's an advocate for libertarians, right, which you would assume would be small government, disclosure, information to the people, he actually shot this down. My own speculation belief is that Rand Paul thinks it's not possible, that it's just not possible. You can't travel faster than light. There's no way aliens could get here. There's no way they could be here without us knowing. So he assumes that it's just not possible. So why spend any money on it? And since he's in charge of Homeland Security Committee or ranking member, he said, yeah, we're not going to do it. So he opposed it, which is, yeah, really unfortunate. Another gut punch. 3 provisions still made it, although, yeah, obviously not the whole thing. What you really want is a 9-person member panel, right, who's not related to the government, not from the Department of Defense, from the CIA, or the national labs, right? If we could have a separate group of people actually overlooking at all this information, I think it makes it much stronger. Plus, the president would have to get involved and actually say the word UAP, which so far I don't think President Biden has really acknowledged it.
All right, and so yeah, some good points there. I will say, I would kind of disagree with Chris's view of seeing like the 9-person review panel as this thing that we need. Again, as I've made clear in this video, I think it's too vulnerable to corruption, to manipulation, to these people being compromised and getting to make these decisions about what gets disclosed publicly. Now, I get sort of the Soul Foundation and Carl Nell, and I get this idea of like, let's have a controlled disclosure, but who's doing that controlled disclosure and what does it really look like? I'm in favor of a rewriting of the bill where that presidential authority would have to be taken out. And I would open it up. Why 9 people? Why can't we have like a much bigger committee? And I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and brainstorm like what a better bill would look like. But for sure, the hearings are a better route. I would agree. And this is my last point here, right? Possible routes to an actual disclosure. Hearings, yes. Let these people come forward. Leaks, okay. If you look back at the history, I've referenced this book in my other videos. It's called State of Silence. And it's a history of what is called in the book the secrecy regime of the United States, and how it's all worked, and how things have come out, right? You can look at things like the Pentagon Papers, Edward Snowden, are some of just like the big highlight examples, but there's a lot of other examples too. For example, COINTELPRO, which was the FBI, was infiltrating innocent citizen activists, citizen rights groups, and was sabotaging their efforts. The FBI, highly illegal. That's not in their charter. That's against the law. And the only way that that came out, it was pretty wild. A couple that were like radical activists, they broke into the FBI headquarters and stole the documents and leaked them. And that's the only reason that that came out. And that was in this whole decade of the 70s, where a lot of this dirt came out about really the intelligence community. That's why inspector generals were set up to start to oversee them. So people need to leak stuff, I think. And honestly, though, to move on to the third bullet point, you don't even need to leak stuff today. I mean, David Grusch is the example of that. There are more protections than ever now for whistleblowers, right? The year before David Grusch came out, the unprecedented whistleblower laws were put into law, which created this whole system for you to come forward, submit your information to the inspector general, the appropriate office of the inspector general, and go through a whole process, and then, be allowed to be a whistleblower without it being illegal. David Grusch, still, nobody else has done what Grusch did. Where's the other whistleblowers? Where's the next person that's going to be like a David Grusch? I don't know. And maybe David Grusch is unique in that he was the person tasked with investigating these special access programs for the UAP task force. So maybe there wasn't anyone else in the position to start talking to and gathering the evidence he did. But we know that he had, as he said, about 40 firsthand whistleblowers. So where are these people, and where are they in this process of going through the whistleblower acts? Again, that was something that's been talked about recently, is having more protections for these people, because allegedly they're still threatened. They can still lose their job. They could still, whatever. They don't have enough protections. And allegedly that's been something they've been trying to get past. I think that is the best way, not this review panel, and not the president getting to say, oh, no, I'm going to postpone it indefinitely, after 25 years. Like, no, I don't think we're going to get the truth that way. And then to the last bullet point, like just public disclosure, right? Like there are those who have made the argument, which I think is interesting, of like, maybe we shouldn't be like relying on the government. Like maybe we need to just go try to get a disclosure on our own terms. And I don't know what that would really look like. Maybe it just looks like people putting out information and people doing research, things like documentaries and reporting and investigative journalism. Look, investigative journalism is what got us to know some of the darkest secrets of the government all these decades. So it's no surprise that it could do the same thing. Now, to end on a good note here, yes, we have hearings coming, and they were announced recently that it would be November 13th of this year. And as we've covered in a previous video, the House Representative Nancy Mace will be chairing the hearing. And to me, this is a clear good sign, because if you watched the 2023 hearing with David Grusch, I would say her probably more than any of the other Congress people didn't beat around the bush, and she went right for the questions that you should be asking, like, where are the bodies? Where are the crashed UFOs? Like, what? So let's just end with a clip of a snippet of her saying that.
If you believe we have crashed craft, stated earlier, do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
As I've stated publicly already in my News Nation interview, biologics came with some of these recoveries. Yeah.
Were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still on the program.
And was this documentary evidence, this video, photos, eyewitness? Like, how would that be determined?
The specific documentation I would have to talk to you in a skiff about.
So yeah, she's getting right to the point, and I do think that that's hopeful for this hearing coming up in November. And I think that's how, to me, that is the most logical way to start to get the truth out as public knowledge, whatever the truth really is let these whistleblowers go in public hearings, answer questions, and let these whistleblowers talk to people that are going to be tasked with investigating this inside of Congress. At least we have a hope there. At least we have a hope. We have more people that may actually pursue this and investigate this than some presidentially appointed 9-person panel with a presidential authority to postpone disclosure indefinitely. So let me know what you think. And I think it's good. Look, it's good that the bill didn't get passed. And it's good that we're getting this hearing. Maybe, just maybe, there's so much more going on behind the scenes that we're not even aware of. Maybe this bill was a way to do the same thing that they've done with the JFK assassination case and just have a system where it's like we're handling it, so you can't say anything. But look, 60 years later, we still don't know the truth. Same thing could happen, and that was just with an assassination of a president. This, I would say, is a much weightier issue, like the fact of an alien presence on Earth and the fact of a UFO retrieval and reverse engineering program. And let me just say, too, that could also involve a suppressed knowledge of a physics and a technology that could really help. It could help the world and help human beings live in a better way. It's possible. All right. And that's what we need to get to the bottom of, in my view. So once again, thank you for watching. Appreciate you. And I'll see you in the next one. Take care.